Hey, hockey card fans. Welcome back to the channel. Today I went back to Heroes Cards and Comics for the first time in like months. They got something interesting. They took over the next door space and they got a store called Villains. So they have Heroes and now they have Villains. Villains is where they're getting rid of a lot of their older stuff that's just kicking around. Some of it's broken, not selling, whatever. So it is interesting to go see. You can pick up a lot of like toys, comics, records, cards of all sorts of different things. Definitely worth checking out if you're ever in the London area. A place called Heroes and Villains on Dundas Street, downtown. So I'm back. I got 20 cards. I paid $33. That's including the taxes. That's $30 for the cards and $3 for the taxes. These are all from the 1973-74 set. Stat year, so the 1974 O-PEE-CHEE set. This is the Philadelphia Flyers' first Stanley Cup. And let's check them out. First up, we got Chicago Blackhawks defenseman Bill White. He was a three-time All-Star. Actually started his career with the LA, then got traded to Chicago Blackhawks. And played in two Stanley Cup finals with them in 71 and 73. They could never get past the Montreal Canadiens. Ended his career at the end of 76. Not a long career. He was also part of the 72 Summit Series. New York Islanders coach Al Arbour. Don't need any introduction to him. He won 4 Stanley Cups with the New York Islanders as their head coach. He went to a 5th straight Stanley Cup final. Took them to a 5th straight Stanley Cup. But they lost to Edmonton Oilers and the transition between dynasties. I personally think the Islanders dynasty was better than the Oilers. Simply because they were a more well-rounded team. From the forwards to the defense to the goaltending, just better than the Oilers as far as that goes, like all around. Oilers had Gretzky, the Islanders had Bossy. Oilers had Messier, the Islanders had Trottier. Glenn Anderson, well, hell, you got Clark Gillies, who's a lot tougher. Defenseman, Paul Coffey, Potvin was much better defenseman. So was Kenny Morrow, Stefan Pearson. Better defenseman than Coffey, Greg, and Huddy, as well as Lowe. You had 2 of the Sutters that were tough guys. You had Butch Goring. You know, it was just a better team, I think, all around than the Oilers. Goaltending, you had Billy Smith and Glenn Resch in the first one. Much better than Fuhr and whoever else they had. So Al Arbour was a good coach. He was their first coach. He'd also coached with the St. Louis Blues from 71 to 73, so he took over from Scotty Bowman and coached them before becoming the Islanders head coach. I actually have an Al Arbour card from his playing days. He played for Detroit Red Wings. I can't remember if it's a rookie card or not. I'll have to go through those and show them off one day. So, Hall of Fame guy. Next up, we have defenseman, California Seals, Bob Stewart. I love those jerseys. This is when the owner of the Seals was the owner of the Oakland A's. So the jerseys are kind of match. But that's my favorite Seals jersey. Bob Stewart, unfortunately, was with the Boston Bruins in 1971-72. So this is when Boston won the Stanley Cup. But then he got traded. Traded from the Boston Bruins with Reggie Leach and Rick Smith to California Golden Seals for Don O'Donoghue and Carol Vodney. That sucks. He'd played 8 games with the Bruins and then 16 with the Seals. He spent most of his time in the AHL. Hillier got traded from St. Louis Blues to Pittsburgh for Blair Chapman. Okay, so he was with St. Louis. After the Seals, he went to the Cleveland Barons and the St. Louis Blues and Pittsburgh Penguins. Not exactly an all-star. Then we got the right winger, Washington Capitals, Jack Eggers. Obviously, he was part of the expansion draft because he's in a St. Louis Blues uniform. He had actually been a 4th round, 20th overall pick 1966 by the New York Rangers. Didn't have a great career. He's actually traded from the St. Louis Blues, New York Rangers for Glenn Sather and player to be named later, which was Rene Villemure. Then he was claimed an expansion draft from the New York Rangers. He started his career with the Rangers, got traded to the Blues, and then got traded back to the Rangers before being claimed by Washington. Next up, we have Vancouver Canucks center Donnie Lever, Don Lever, whatever his name is. Actually a fairly decent player, not a great player, but decent. Played for the Vancouver Canucks, Atlanta/Calgary Flames, Colorado Rockies, New Jersey Devils, and Buffalo Sabres. Part of some big trades, actually. Traded from Vancouver to Atlanta, along with Brad Smith for Ivan Boldarev and Darcy Rota. Boldarev was the centerpiece of that trade. And then one of the worst trades Colorado ever made. They traded Lever with Bob McMillan to Colorado for Lanny McDonald. Bad trade on their part. But Lever was a consistent 20 goal scorer throughout most of his career. Then we have defenseman, Minnesota North Stars, Dennis O'Brien. I went on a boat tour in Newfoundland, O'Brien's. But this guy's from Port Hope. Long-time Minnesota North Star. Did go to Boston Bruins in '78, as well as play for the Cleveland Barons and Colorado Rockies. So, moved around quite a bit. And we have left winger, Atlanta Flames, Jacques Richard. This guy had a lot of hype. He had a lot of personal problems while he was in the NHL. I love that Flames jersey. I just love the jersey. It's one of the better jerseys out there. He's actually a 1972. The Atlanta Flames chose him with their first round pick, second overall. So he was a high draft pick. Came out of the Quebec Remparts, where he won two Memorial trophies. Was a teammate of Guy Lafleur back then. Just never made it with Atlanta. His best season, he didn't have his best season until 1980-81 when he was with the Quebec Nordiques. He scored 52 goals, 51 assists for 103 points. Never came close to any of that after or before that. Atlanta traded him to Buffalo for Larry Carrier in a round 1 pick in the 76 draft. So they did get something back for him. Got released by Buffalo and signed by Quebec in 1980. So he just could not keep his career together. Next up, we have right winger for the Montreal Canadiens, Hall of Famer Yvon the Roadrunner Cornwallis. The Roadrunner was quite the player. He was only 5'7", but he was fast. That's why they call him the Roadrunner. He won 8 Stanley Cups in Montreal, although he was injured for most of the last one. He won a Stanley Cup in 65, 66, 68, 69, 71, 73, 76, and 78. 77 he missed the whole year. Didn't really appear in the 79, or there'd be 2 more there. He was a 73 Conn Smythe Trophy winner and the NHL 100th anniversary team. 4-time All-Star. Excellent player for such a small guy. 1972, in 73 games, he had 47 goals. 36 assists for 83 points. So they played a full 80-game season. Probably would have scored 50 goals. Again, injuries did him in. Then we have Buffalo Sabres right winger, Rene Robert, part of the French connection in Buffalo. He actually started his career in Toronto and then went to Pittsburgh before being traded to Buffalo. So he was claimed in the interleague draft from Pittsburgh by Buffalo. Claimed in that same draft by Buffalo from Toronto Maple Leafs, so I don't know who had him. Traded from the Pittsburgh Penguins to Buffalo Sabres for Eddie Shack. So yeah, okay, so now I get this. So Rene Robert was claimed in the interleague draft by the Buffalo Sabres from the Toronto Maple Leafs, but then the Pittsburgh Penguins claimed him from Buffalo in the same thing. They had this interleague draft where teams would select players from a certain list. It was to give a semblance of free agency, but never really worked. Then later, Pittsburgh traded him to Buffalo for Eddie Shack. Then he got traded from Colorado to Toronto for future consideration. So he went back to Toronto, didn't play very much. Injuries, probably. Next up, we have left winger, Pittsburgh Penguins, J. Bob Kelly, rookie card. This is his first card. He's not the same. There was another Bob Kelly that played for the Philly. This is not him. That's an airbrush card. He was actually part of the New York Rangers back in '73, but then in '74 he was traded from St. Louis Blues with Ab DeMarco and Steve Durbano to Pittsburgh for Greg Polis and Brian Watson. So the bad boy Steve Durbano, he played with him. Then he went to the Chicago Blackhawks somehow. He does get a couple more NHL cards, which is good, so that's good. Now we're going with Philadelphia Flyers left winger, Ross Lonsberry. Lonsberry was a 2-time Cup winner With the Philadelphia Flyers, I have several of his cards. And he got traded to Pittsburgh. New York Rangers center, Jean Rattel. Jean Rattel is probably, he's in the top 5 for players who never won a Stanley Cup. This guy is in the Hall of Fame. He won the 71 Bill Masterton Trophy. Played a lot of years with the New York Rangers. Went to a Cup final with them in 72, where they lost to Boston. He then got traded to Boston for Phil Esposito and went to 2 more Stanley Cup finals. He ended his career in 1981 at the age of 40. He was on the Canada 70. Rattel was also on the Canada Summits team. So he was traded from New York Rangers with Brad Park and Joe Zanuzzi to Boston for Phil Esposito and Carol Vodney. I think the Rangers got hosed on that trade. I don't think it was that great of a deal for them. Boston came out great. They got Brad Park, who's another Hall of Famer, and Rattel. All right, moving on. We got next Boston Bruins defenseman Dallas Smith. Dallas Smith was the stay-at-home defenseman that allowed guys like Bob Orr to rush up, and he won 2 Stanley Cups with the Boston Bruins. He'd also won a couple of Central Pacific Hockey League, I think that's it, CPHL. He won 2 cups for them with the Oklahoma City Blazers. Longtime Boston Bruins, spent his last season with the New York Rangers. He was once loaned by Boston to Montreal in 1961. But didn't win a cup. Okay. Interesting. You could loan players back then. Moving on, we got a coach. Atlanta Flames coach, Bernie Boom Boom Geoffrion. He had previously coached the New York Rangers and then coached the Atlanta Flames for 2 seasons. In their first 2 seasons. Didn't do bad. He was .430. He won 55 games with the Atlanta Flames. Tied 29, lost the rest. His problems were stomach ailments. He actually went on to coach the Montreal Canadiens, but couldn't handle the pressure. Boom Boom, as a player, won 6 Stanley Cups. He would coach 1 more year in Atlanta, but then would give up halfway through with a 22-20-10 record. The Atlanta Flames actually had a fairly good team in the mid-70s. They just could never get out of the first round of the playoffs. It was a common theme, and that's why they couldn't really build a fan base. They never had deep runs in the playoffs, which would get the hype going, and that's why they left for Calgary. Plus, they couldn't find corporate sponsors. It was just, had they made a deep run in the playoffs, it might have saved them in Atlanta. Next up, we get defenseman, California Seals, or Oakland Seals, I forget which one. Same thing. Ted McAneely. He won a Central Hockey League Cup with the Salt Lake Golden Eagles in '75, but spent all his time with the Golden Seals and 1 year with the Edmonton Oilers. I do have his rookie card, and this is his 3rd-year card. All right, moving along. We have St. Louis Blues right winger Pierre Plante. He had previously been with the Philadelphia Flyers. He was actually drafted in the first round, 9th overall in the '71 draft by the Flyers. But he was traded from Philly with Brent Hughes to St. Louis for Andre Moose DuPont in a round 3 pick. Later played for the Chicago Blackhawks, New York Rangers, and finally ended his career with the Nordiques. Chicago Blackhawks left winger Dennis Hall. This is the brother of Bobby Hall and the uncle of Brett Hall. Not in the Hall of Fame. He was a 1-time All-Star. Never won a Stanley Cup, unfortunately. They ran into Montreal twice and lost, which is fortunate for me, because I'm a Montreal fan. Not as good as his brother, but a steady player. I didn't know this, but he actually finished his career in Detroit in 77-78. He was part of the 72 Summit Series as well. Moving along, Vancouver Canucks defenseman Dave Dunn. This is a rookie card. Spent 2 years, then went to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he then moved to the WHA, where he won an Avco trophy with the Winnipeg Jets in 77-78. He got traded to Toronto for John Grisdale and Gary Monahan. I would say Vancouver won that trade. They have center, Kansas City Scouts, John Wright. He had been picked up from the Vancouver Canucks, actually. He's got a Vancouver jersey on him. He was traded to Vancouver, from Vancouver to St. Louis for Mike Lampman, then claimed the expansion draft by KC from St. Louis. But they have him in his, that's definitely a Canucks jersey. You can tell with the Dave Dunn. I have this card, and I have the Topps card for this. It's his rookie card, and it's also his only card. John Wright didn't have much of a career in the NHL. Only played 127 games, which is 127 more than I ever did. 16 goals, 36 assists for 52 points. So kudos to him. And then last on the list, LA Kings right winger, Bob Nevin. I never liked the Kings jersey back then. Wasn't my favorite. Bob Nevin actually won 2 Stanley Cups with the Toronto Maple Leafs in the 60s. Then went to the Rangers, North Stars, and finally Kings, and ended his career with the Oilers in 77. So never played with Gretzky. 1964, traded from Toronto with Arnie Brown, Bill Collins, Dick Duff, and Rod Sealing to the Rangers for Andy Bathgate and Don McKenney. I would say the Rangers did well in that trade. So there we have it, 20 cards from the 1974 O-PEE-CHEE set. I like these cards. They have the little comment giving you a little bit more information, like Pierre Plante. He played with a broken wrist. So, you know, it gives all these little details that you miss. Bob is nicknamed Battleship. J. Bob Kelly. I thought the other Kelly was Bob Battleship Kelly. The one that played for Philly. I think it was that one. But they have all these little cartoons on them with some personal information about the player, which I quite like. The only thing I wish they didn't do, which I wish they had, they don't have the position. So you have to flip it over to find out what position they play. The quality of the cards is fairly good. Some of them are excellent. When I go to Heroes Cards and Comics, they usually have like anywhere from 3 to 7 copies of each card. And I get to pick what kind of quality I want. Sometimes I miss muff on them, like the Al Arbor is really bad in the back. I didn't see it. I just saw Al Arbor, looked it over in the front. It looks pretty good, but the back's pretty beat up. Got a lot of staining on it, whatever. Most of them have issues of one type or another, but none of them are badly damaged. And it was worth it. I paid, what, $1.50 per card, roughly? On eBay, I'd be paying the same thing for all these cards, unless there was like a lot for $10. But anyway, all you hockey card enthusiasts out there, let me know what you think. Who has the better jersey? The Atlanta Flames or the California Golden Seals? I like both, personally. But what do you think? Who's got the better jersey? Leave comments in the comment section. Until next time, this has been Hockey Night in Belmont.